Hello there. In this video, I'm going to explain to you as simply as one can the role of the first proposition speaker in a debate in the WSDC or World Schools Debating Championship style format. So first and foremost, the first proposition speaker is also the first speaker in the house, or first speaker in the debate. You are the person who gets up before any other speaker in the room and you open the debate. You start the debate. There's no speaker before you, right? The opposition has not had a team member getting up yet. So you have a certain burden upon you. You have a unique role in the debate, as does every other speaker in the room. You get up, greet the house, and you give us a little bit of a background. How did this motion come about today? Why did this motion come about today? What is the problem or dilemma at the heart of the motion, or at least at the heart of how the sentence is worded, which is called the motion, the sentence that is the motion, in the way it's worded, what it reads as. There's a problem in that, there's a dilemma in there that leads to a debate. So how did that come about? Give us a bit of a history, very briefly. Don't give us a lecture. Very brief, very short, very quick, few seconds, right? History, background, canvas. What is the environment, the context in which this issue takes place, right? And what is that issue? And who is affected by that issue? As in, who are the stakeholders? And how are they affected? Who are the stakeholders? Divide them along the lines of the dilemma that cuts them apart. Who are the stakeholders that would be in favor, most likely in favor, of this motion standing by the end of the debate, this proposed idea standing by the end of the debate? And who would be the stakeholders that would probably less favor or not like this motion to stand by the end of the debate because they see things differently or they are affected differently, and they're probably naturally going to lie on the other side of the house. So make some strategic concession here. It's not all win. It's not a complete universal solution that's a one-size-fits-all win-win entirely for everybody. There's surely going to be some trade-offs somewhere. If there aren't, it means you're interpreting something wrong here, or you're being uncharitable in how you choose to read this motion or how you choose to propose this motion. Because if there was a very straightforward solution where everyone is happy with it equally, there would be no reason to debate now, would there? Right? So identify the stakeholders divided by the dilemma. So along the lines of who would be most benefited by this motion being passed or accepted or embraced successfully, the ones that would be benefiting the most, how would they be benefited, and why is it necessary for them to be benefited as such? And then those would be on the opposing end, right? The trade-off. How would they be affected adversely, and how is it not going to be so bad that perhaps you should not want this motion to stand at all, right? And how is it worthwhile that even if these people are not going to be as equally benefited as others, it so matters that the motion ought to stand rather than fall, right? Present that. Make sure by the time you're done with introducing this motion and setting this motion up, you've done the key fundamental duty as the first proposition speaker of defining the motion very clearly and very systematically for everyone in the house to clearly understand without any doubt. What do I mean by that? Take each keyword, each key phrase, each key descriptor, each key term of reference, or each key terminology worded or referred to or mentioned in that sentence we call the motion. Take that, and each of those systematically, one by one, very clearly explain the meaning, define the meaning, and tell the house the justification why you take that interpretation, that meaning, where perhaps that same term or same word, same terminology can be, or phrase can be interpreted in different ways perhaps, right? So why you interpret the motion the way you do it in terms of those words, those phrases, those key terms, right? Individually. Explain that to the house, provide a justification, right? And make sure it's clear. And then take the whole sentence that the motion is and explain how your team, the proposition team, reads it, interprets it, defines it, and explain why you interpret it that way, right? And what justifies your interpretation to that. The next thing, of course, you need to do is, what exactly will you be debating? What aspect of the motion, from what angle would you be proposing this motion today, right? What angle will you be proposing it from, right? What exactly do you want to achieve with the motion? What is the debate really about? What problem are you going to solve, or what dilemma or what question are you going to solve, and what you will want to prove, what you want to achieve out of this debate by the end of it, by the last speech that occurs in that particular debate. At the end of the proposition reply speech, which is the last speech you have in any debate in the WSDC format, right? So what will you want to prove? What is your objective? What do you want to gain out of this debate, right? And what are the parameters? So for example, sometimes it's necessary when it's a very open-ended, very broad subject, very widely interpretable, for want of a better term, motion. What's off limits, or what's not necessary in this debate, or what two sides are likely going to be in agreement with, and what we don't want to waste time with. So, okay, so what do we not really want to debate about today? What do we want to focus on, right? Where we focus on the real problem and not worry about what's perhaps unnecessary or trivial, and so on and so forth, right? Sometimes that's necessary, sometimes you can't even do that, so use discretion there, right? Okay, so then make some strategic concessions. Okay, what do you agree with, right? In terms of what do you accept are certain downsides of the motion, what problems are never going to be solved either way, right? Concede those things, right? So we're not going to talk about that, right? Okay, so what's the burden of proof? Who wins the debate? How they win the debate, right? So for prop, what is necessary for you to prove, right, to convince the adjudicators, right, conclusively that the motion should stand? What do you need to achieve? Set the target, set the bar, explain that in words to the adjudicator. So this is our burden of proof today. And then set the burden of proof for the other side as well, as first proposition speaker, the way your team sees it. Okay, so basically for the motion to fall, then they must disprove us here, or they must prove something on that end, on the other side as a counter, right? That, well, they have a better view than we do, right? So be reasonable, have a civil, very civil, one-way dialogue with the adjudicator's mind in this, right? So set the burdens of proof. Then go into what we call the case division. So this is where you explain to the house, right, what are the arguments, like the content page of a textbook. What are the arguments that you promise as a proposition team, as a representative of the proposition team, that the adjudicator or panel of adjudicators will hear by the end of the debate from your team, through generally the first and second speakers on your team, right? So usually that's how it's supposed to work. So you either present as many arguments in a debate that are going to be presented by your second speaker, which is equal numbers, or you present more. You don't have a situation where I present one argument and my second speaker presents more. Don't do that. You either present same number, or you present more, right? Okay, in terms of constructive material. So constructive material means these are constructive, productive arguments, reasonings as to how your case for the motion is supported, right? So that's it and done. Like a menu list or a content page of a textbook, right? Read off labels, very short, brief titles or descriptors of what you're going to argue about, what your arguments stand for in the debate. So read off the key labels, as they call them, of your arguments as part of your case division. So this is what I'm going to do. As first speaker, I'll talk about argument A, which is this, argument B, which is this, argument C, which is this. My second speaker will talk about argument D and argument E, which are this and this. Period. Okay. So once you're done with that, so our overall narrative today, or team stand, is that this is what you want to achieve. It's just a bit of a reiteration of what you would have done earlier when you explained to the house, okay, what you want to do, what your key objective is, right? Okay, very quickly remind the house, and then go, okay, so now I will start with my first substantive argument. right? Or first argument for my team, which is then read off the label again, right? In a textbook, you have the contents page where the titles of your topical chapters are listed, and then when you get to the chapter, at the head of the chapter, on the first page of the chapter at the top, you have the title of the chapter, right? So when you get to the chapter, read off the title of the chapter. So same with arguments. You get to your argument, okay, so this is my argument, read off the label, repeat the label that you would have mentioned in your case division. So go on with that. Now, when you deliver your arguments, I'll probably come up with another video somewhere down the road, or somewhere down time, where I explain how these arguments should be structured. So, but there are three key parts. There's of course the introduction of the argument. What is it? What is it about? What does it concern? Why is it important? How it supports the prompt team rather than the opposition team, so on and so forth. Okay, then what is the logic in the argument? What is your analysis of this argument, right? What is the evidence that supports this argument? Illustrate the argument that it works, it benefits as an argument in support of the motion, by way of an illustrative example that's real world, right? And then, of course, summarize the argument at the end of the argument before you move on to the next argument, which is something that too many debaters today, unfortunately, they do not do, right? They just take it for granted. They don't have the signposting. They don't do sufficient reiteration or highlighting or emphasizing, and sometimes it's hard to track, number one, for adjudicators. That's not good for you. And also, the message might be lost in that if you do not sufficiently do the reiteration or reminders as to, wait, this is the focus of my argument, that's the purpose of the summary. At the end of each argument, you summarize it to explain, so this is exactly what I did with it. If it wasn't already clear as I was delivering this argument, this is what it's about, right? So in summary, the key point. So I don't want you to miss that. I want you to weigh that against my opponents, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, adjudicators, right? So that's what you do. Then you move on to the next argument. Inform the adjudicator. Okay, so I'm moving on to the next argument right now, and then repeat that, right? Then you have a third argument there. Repeat that, right? Then, once you're done with your arguments, again, do a quick summary, right, of your whole speech. What did you do today? You introduced the motion, you defined it as such, you said this is what you want, and this is what you've contributed in the debate so far as the first speaker in the forms of your arguments and the analysis therein those arguments, whatnots, right? And then have a closing statement that, okay, so this much in this debate has been achieved by the proposition speech by the end of my proposition team, by the end of my speech, and by the end of this debate, we are confident we're going to do yada 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 yada. What are we going to prove, right? So do that, thank the house, sit down, right? So that's the role of the first proposition speaker in a debate. So you open the debate and you open the case for the proposition team in the debate, right? By introducing the motion, defining it, explaining how we get there, what your case for forwarding that motion is, why it's worthwhile, and what are the arguments in favor. Just a basic, this is a very basic, rudimentary role of the first speaker. Of course, you can go into a lot more details of signposting and structure and what a first speaker can do to deliver a good speech and good arguments and respond to things like points of information. That may be for another time, but basically I've covered today in this video. It's a bit lengthy, almost twice the length, or 1.5 times, definitely more than 1.5 times the length of WSDC style speech, a full substantive speech of 8 minutes. But that's what I've covered, what fundamentally a first proposition speaker is supposed to do. All the best.